I'm your master of ceremonies, Bob Fopp. Welcome back to the Outdated Entertainment Hour. This week, Bob Smith will take you on a journey back in the 1970s rock and roll. With 5 guitarists he feels should be mentioned among the greats much more often. Rock and roll. Can you imagine the mentality of someone who listens to rock and roll? I heard that movie once. Bob's going to go back to the 70s with that loud earjar. No, it's not that I don't like guitar music. Give me a little Les Paul from the 50s, perhaps. Or Roy Clark. Or perhaps Django Reinhardt. Now, there's a guitarist I could sink my teeth into. Rock and roll. Well, in any event, you rockers, it's the Outdated Entertainment Hour. No smoking in the theater. I repeat, no smoking. Hello, everybody. My name is Bob Smith. You might remember me from my days doing entertainment writing in the New York City area, or maybe you don't. But either way, this is the Outdated Entertainment Hour. Welcome to our new episode. I will be flying solo for just this one episode, I guess, just the way things worked out in this time period. And I wanted to get a show out before too long of a time passed. I want to thank everyone for the gigantic response we got to our Star Trek show, featuring Steve Gennarelli and Brian R. Solomon, the esteemed podcasters that they are. And the mailbag filled up, and a lot of people said, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Which is kind of stuff I really love. And it was a great show. And I'll tell you what, I was able to find personally, we talked about this, talking about the show made me want to watch it again. What's a mother to do? From what I understand, it's out of syndication, and it is on the Paramount Plus streaming network currently. And you can see the original series. But I believe what they're showing is the remastered original series. That's not what I want. As we talked about on that episode, I wanted all the squeaks and squawks of the cabin and the original sound, the original special effects, everything. I don't need it sweetened. I don't need it changed. I didn't like the colorized Three Stooges. Why would I want to modernize Star Trek, being that it was made in the 1960s? So I was able to find seasons 1 and 2 on brand new DVDs, unopened, on eBay. So that's how I'm starting my journey back into the original Star Trek, because I need to watch it now. I really need to see it. And I have other people who want to watch it too. But I just think it was a mistake on Paramount's part, or whoever owns it, to do it that way, but that's how they do it. But at least I got my hands on the original 1960s-ish complete productions, which I adored when I was growing up. And I'm really looking forward to seeing them again starting in a few days, as soon as the nice UPS man drops off my little package, which is great. So if you're looking for those unedited, as they were originally shown, NBC 1966 to 1969 episodes, try eBay. It seems to be the best source right now, unless you have a really groovy used DVD store in your town, which New York City, where I live, used to have tons of used DVD stores and new DVD stores. Now there are none. They're all gone. I can't think of one. If there's one out there, somebody can point me toward it, because I can't find it. So I consider myself lucky to find anything these days. And I'll tell you how I know that there's no DVD stores anymore. Out-of-print stuff I am finding being offered for sale on Amazon for only about 600% more than it's worth. Like an out-of-print DVD of just some obscure movie. Somebody wants $200 for it. Come on, please. Same thing's happening with regular CDs too. If you have a used CD store in your town, walk in and shake their hand, because as this stuff becomes rarer and rarer, people are gouging more and more for them. So whatever good deals you can find, I recommend you do that. And you know what I hear? I hear Salvation Armies and other charity stores where people drop off CDs to resell. Another great place to find value in CDs and DVDs. Oh, you know what else? Garage sales, man. $1 DVDs. I see them all over the place. Garage sales. Trust me, they're worth stopping your car and checking out. Before we get to our festivities here, I just want to give a shout out one more time to my friend Pete Mancini and his new album, American Equator. It is going great guns. It's been written up all over the country. He's in the midst of both performing regionally here and also on tour with the great Jimmy Webb, the great singer-songwriter. So Pete is going great guns, and I just want to give him a tip of the cap here. Just wanted to follow up on that. It's available anywhere you get your CDs. It's Pete Mancini, American Equator. All right, we're gonna look at 5 rock and roll guitarists from the 1970s primarily. Actually, all of them. None of them are getting the plaudits these days for what they deserve. Vastly underrated. Not as players, but they need to be talked about more today. I've got a list of 5 of them. One of them we talked about on the show before. The other 4 are people we have not talked about on the show before, and I think they're all greats, all-time greats. But I bet you at least 2 of these names you have never heard of in your life. Well, we're going to change that today. And I'm going to try to point you toward where you can find their music and enjoy it one way or another. If there's CDs, if they're streaming, I'm going to let you know where to hear it. I will not leave you hanging on this one. If you like the sound of the artist that I'm describing, you will have the opportunity to hear it probably most times at the click of a button. So you want to hear some new rock and roll or what? Or should I say some new old rock and roll? Well, first of all, we have to hear from Joe Walsh. There's a great new old rock and roller. And we'll be back with 5 more great guitarists right after this.
Hi, everybody. This is Joe Walsh. One thing I do when I'm not playing rock and roll is get on the air as an amateur radio operator. Also called ham radio, is a communication service provided by ordinary people just like you and me. Ham radio operators are everywhere, in your city, your area, your neighborhood, in any country you go to. We have a national emergency communication system in place 24/7, 365. In case of natural or man-made disasters, earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, you name it, we're there. Find out more about amateur radio at arrl.org/whatishamradio. See you on the air.
All right, I hope you have yourself tuned up now because we're going to go into the guitar world now once again and look at 5 guitarists who I think have not gotten their due, not even close, as the decades passed. And I have enjoyed their records immensely, all 5 of these people. There are actually 6 because I have a pair. I'm sneaking a pair in there because nowhere talks about their instrumental acuity, and I'm about to do that. First of all, here's a little tidbit about how I started this podcast. A lot of you know me from the Outdated Wrestling Hour podcast. That did so well, but Brian Solomon came on my show, or I came on his, I don't remember which, and one of us, or he said, man does not live by wrestling alone, and neither do I. I love wrestling. I love old school wrestling, that is, but I have other interests, show business interests, all kinds of things I'm into. Gosh, I bowl twice a week. You know, we all have our varied tastes in our lives. If you don't, I'll find a few hobbies because, you know, it'll really take the edge off things. When I started this podcast, the second one, I was in the midst of investigating doing this through Spotify. Because at the time, Spotify was allowing podcasters to use short clips of the music in their library on their podcast. It would count as a play, you know, because of royalties. It was the only way to get music that people know onto your podcast. So I was in the midst of setting it up. I swear, I was like 75% ready to go with this particular podcast, the Outdated Entertainment Hour, when they changed their minds. Spotify decided that not enough users or producers of podcasts were using that particular methodology of using their music, so they scrapped it. So when you're doing a music podcast and you'd like to get the music on a podcast, this is why you never hear music on a podcast, or at least the music that people talk about, because they don't have the rights to it. And you can really get hammered for using music you don't have the rights to on a podcast. And I personally, when putting both my podcasts together, I'm very cognizant of everyone's rights. I will not lift the photo I don't have rights to. I will not use music I don't have rights to. Nothing like that. I won't read something that somebody else wrote. Forget it. It's not happening. Other people, I see them doing it left, right, and sideways, and I don't care. I have my own standards to live up to, and that's just the way it is. So I would love to play you the music of all these artists, but, legally I can't do it. But I sure wish I could, because one song from each of these artists, and you're going to run to your Amazon Echo, or you're going to run here, or you run there, or check your own record collections to see if you can hear some of these fine artists. So here we go. Enough of my yakking, as Marty DeBerge would say. He's about to make a comeback too. So Marty DeBerge, I think you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, Bill Nelson is one of the finest guitar players I've ever heard. Not even close. He's in my top 10 of all time. And I own exactly one album by his group, Bebop Deluxe. I'm serious. I own one of about 6 or 7 albums they made in the United States, or at least released here, and it's enough. It's fantastic. The album is called Live in the Air Age. It came out in 1977. It's a magnificently recorded, perfectly performed 2-album set, or at least it was at the time. And if you want to hear a guitarist who could do it all with the same band. I mean, I was researching a little bit. They almost started out as kind of like a glam rock band, and then people were calling it a progressive rock band, and others were calling them a new wave band. I don't hear that. Others were calling them metal. I don't hear that either. Others were calling it blues. Bill could play the blues, but it wasn't a blues band. Or pop rock, plain old rock, or folk rock, art rock, progressive pop. People tried to pigeonhole this band into a, like they always do with music. What are they? You know what they were? They were a Bebop Deluxe. An amazingly tight, incredibly tuneful, strangely lyrical band capable of the heaviest of sounds to charming ballads to off-kilter humor to anything. They could play anything. It was a quartet. But it was led by Bill Nelson. Wait till you hear the guitar playing on Live in the Air Age. It's spectacular. It's not good. It's not great. It's not a good night at the office. It shows you what an all-encompassing, well-rounded, astounding guitar player this guy was. How he is not listed amongst the best of all time. Again, he's got the Domenic Troiano syndrome, and we're going to talk about Domenic in a minute. But Domenic played all different kinds of styles. Bill Nelson also played all different kinds of styles, and that gets held against them both only in the industry. Ask other players, and we'll get into that in a second too. Ask other British people what they think of Bill Nelson. Think of his fellow musicians what they thought of Bill Nelson's acuity on the guitar. Unbelievable lead runs, a type of which you've never heard before. He didn't copy a lick from anybody except for one slight Chuck Berry nod he does on this album. Everything else sounds original and fresh and bright and vibrant and incredible. He can play fast, he can play slow, he can play acoustic, mostly electric. He was just one of the best guitarists I've ever heard. I treasure my original CD copy of Live. I actually have it on an album, too. I had an album originally, and I got one of the few CD American copies that were available when they were first released. Bebop Deluxe, you can try their other music, too. Most of it's available on streaming. But as far as Live in the Air Age goes, I just saw it for sale on CD at Amazon, and type it into the better music browsers. Like I'm finding out that YouTube Music is very good for finding stuff you can't find anywhere else. Give that a shot. Bill Nelson, Bebop Deluxe. And to me, the high watermark was Live in the Air Age. They made one more album after that, and they were gone by 1980. The band didn't even last into the 1980s because nobody knew what to do with them, except the lucky people who got to hear Bill Nelson play. Bob Broken Record brings you Domenic Troiano once again. And I know we had one of our early shows about the Guess Who with Mark Doble, and we talked a lot about Domenic Troiano. I am still trying to corral him and hopefully Frank Troiano, his brother, to do a whole show on Domenic Troiano. There was a great book that they wrote together, Domenic Troiano, The Man and His Music. You've got to find it. It's really a terrific book. And if you don't think Domenic Troiano was a great guitarist, guess who wrote the foreword for the book? Alex Lifeson of Rush. Both Canadians, I know. But if Alec Lifeson thinks the guy is a monster, he was a monster. But he wasn't a monster in a Stevie Ray Vaughan way or a Jeff Beck way or even, let's say, a Eddie Van Halen way. He was a master of taste, tone, and style. He could play the blues. He could play jazz. He could play hard rock. If you listen to the song Long Gone by the Guess Who from the Flavors album, you will hear practically a metal solo. Amazing achievement on that one. He could play pop. He could do it all. His first band was Mandala in Canada, which was a R&B crusade, so to speak. You know, one of those jumping R&B bands with a lot of funky soul, and the crowds would just say, yeah, 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 all night long. And the girls would rush the stage trying to get at George Oliver, the lead singer. I'm not making this up. This is all true. So after that band went belly up, for whatever reasons, artistically, he formed a band called Bush. And it's interesting that, you know, the Domenic Troiano band Bush, Robert Palmer was a fan. I just read this on Facebook. I don't know what it means, but Prakash John was Dominic's bass player, who is now working some areas in Canada still. Robert Palmer, years ago, found out he was on the same bill with them and just went nuts because they were the opener. It's great. It's amazing. So in any event, yeah, a lot of people knew Domenic Troiano, at least people in the know. I mean, if you want to ask people about him, ask Alice Lifeson, ask David Clayton Thomas, ask Gary Peterson, the drummer from the Guess Who, ask a bunch of people. Ask Roy Kenner. Just go down the list. Domenic was as good as it gets. But it's when he turned progressive rocker in the mid to late 70s that he did the best work of his career. His late 70s album called The Joke's on Me is available for streaming on most streaming services. You can hear it there. That's a really great record. Just a 5 great musicians, produced by Terry Brown. You know who Terry Brown was? He was the producer for Rush for most of their hit albums. So if I could tell you to listen to nothing else, listen to The Joke's on Me, as well as go on YouTube of all places, and somebody has dubbed a radio broadcast from a station in Canada when Domenic was on Capitol Records. He was on Capitol Records. And find live at Thundersound Toronto and FM broadcast from the late 70s as well. You'll shut it off and go, how did I never hear this guy? Most people say the same things. But again, he wasn't all flash. He could burn. He played with all 4 fingers on his left hand. And it gave him a unique style where he could play a rhythm note as well as a lead at the same time. Astounding. He was too varied. And here's how you know Domenic Troiano was a great guitar player. Steely Dan asked him to join Steely Dan twice. He got offers from Alice Cooper and the Edgar Winter Group as well. But he was busy at the time with both the James Gang. I always remiss mentioning he was with the James Gang and the Guess Who. Domenic had the misfortune of replacing Joe Walsh in the James Gang. It's an impossible feat. Nobody could do it. They should have really hung it up. Glenn Peters and Jim Fox kept going with various James Gang incarnations without Joe Walsh. But America didn't want to hear it, which is really unfair, but that's the way things go. It's the same way when Tommy Bolin joined Deep Purple. They made one of the greatest records I ever heard in Come Taste the Band, but they didn't want to hear it. They want to hear Blackmore. Fans want to go with the originals. I understand that. I mean, Journey perpetuated without Steve Perry, but everybody knew it wasn't the same. Everybody I know that knows Domenic and knows Steely Dan says that Domenic would have been amazing in Steely Dan. We can only dream, right? All right, let's move on to a couple of guys in the same band. They both played lead, but in drastically different ways. I'm talking about somebody I became personally friendly with in the 1990s into the 2000s. Paul Cotton and Rusty Young of Poco. I was lucky enough to just bump into them in a couple of arenas that I happened to be in, and soon, every time they would come into town, we would get together, probably about 5 or 6 times, and always say hello and have a nice conversation with them all. I got to meet him and Jack Sundred, the fantastic bass player, who's now in a great band called Cimarron 415. You should check that out. It's like the remnants of the Poco years. They all formed a band together. It's well worth checking out. Cimarron 415. If you like classic country style rock, it's for you. Absolutely. But back to our guys here. Paul Cotton was a vastly underrated guitarist who joined Poco in the early 70s. Sometime after the departure of Jimmy Messina, was brought on to join Rusty Young, George Grantham, and Timothy B. Schmidt and Richie Furay to help put a little more rock into their country rock, and it worked like crazy. It really worked great. A gifted songwriter, but he could really go. He was the singer of Heart of the Night, Paul Cotton was, which was one of the 2 biggest hits that Poco ever had. If you want to hear his best guitar playing on album, check out albums like 7, Live, and especially Legend, where they had their big hits. They reveal him to be a unique guitarist with the style of all his own. I can't describe the way Paul Cotton played. Really unique. And the song Legend is about a running horse, basically. The fade on that song, where he's playing lead over the rhythm, somehow sounds like a rampaging horse. It's one of the best lead guitar solos I've ever heard describing something that's going on. Just amazing. Just a real fiery solo. For country rock, these guys were almost metallic in a way. Their sound got beefier later on in their careers, after the 7 album in 1974. Poco's vastly underrated. I liked them better than the Eagles. They were just more interesting to me, but I'm one of those foolish people who didn't care who sold the most records and didn't care about what was on the radio, because I heard the same 18 songs on the radio all the time. I wanted to hear something else. So Poco became part of my life from my teenage years till today. Paul Cotton left us not that long ago, and so did Rusty Young, a member of the Guitar Player Magazine Hall of Fame. That should tell you everything you need to know. He played pedal steel guitar, although you probably didn't know it even from listening to the records. He souped up pedal steel like nobody had ever dreamed of doing before him. What an innovator he was. Now, think of Buck Owens and the Buckaroos or bands like that. You heard pedal steel guitar and stuff like that. That twangy, loopy sound, kind of lightweight, but it sounded country. Well, Poco was a country rock band that also had the emphasis on rock and roll. Rusty would do things like hook up a Leslie speaker, to the pedal steel, and other ways of amplifying it so it didn't even sound anything like a pedal steel, and he could make it sound like a racing car or a hard rock guitar or a violin or anything he wanted. He was incredible, absolutely incredible. Live, it was astounding, particularly in his younger years. He would turn over the pedal steel, because if you've ever seen him play, it's played with a bar. Forgive me, I do not know the technical term. I know about music, but there's a metal piece that they use to slide across the fretboard while the hand picks down below on the lower part of the pedal steel guitar, right? So he would turn the whole damn thing over and face the stage and rock out playing pedal steel guitar solos, and the crowds would go bat. He was so good. He was such a great player. Nobody ever sounded like Rusty Young. He changed the way that game was played. He is the Michael Jordan of pedal steel players. No one will ever be better. I mean, he would constantly, use different strings of different gauges, and he'd turn up the volume higher than anybody who ever played pedal steel would ever turn it up. And when he launched into solos on great songs like Skatin' from the album 7, Heart of the Night when he played live, a beautiful creamy solo he would play. He was so emotional on Heart of the Night. And also Poco's version of Steely Dan's Dallas. I never heard sounds like those before. Rusty Young and Paul Cotton, they were famous as a band, but they both should be famous as guitarists equally. When they were on in a live setting, nobody was a better live act than Poco. You didn't have to be a country rocker to enjoy it. Everybody knows the Doobie Brothers, right? Tom Johnston is on this list. His lead guitar style was kind of the era sounding to me, right? I mean, I would rate him at a level similar to, let's say, Kurt Warner, the Guess Who, or the guys in Three Dog Night. They had a great guitar player. I think Michael Alford was his name in Three Dog Night. In terms of his electric style, very, very good. That's not why I'm putting him on this list, though. The rhythm guitarist of the rock era. In blues, I count Jimmy Vaughn as the rhythm guitarist of the rock era. For me, it's Tom Johnston. Those chunka rhythms, as they were described by a rock critic in Rolling Stone once. Those chunka rhythms. How many hit songs was he responsible for by writing those awesome guitar parts? Not the leads, the rhythm part. All right, think about it. Here we go. Listen to the music. Think of that in your head for a second. The Doctor. Think of that in your head for a second. China Grove, right? How's that song start? Think about it. Long Train Running. How's that song start? On the list goes. He had a signature style, a signature rock and roll style that's made them one of the greatest rock and roll bands of all time, and they're still playing to this day, astoundingly. Starting way back around 1970 or so. Astounding. Why? Because they consistently put out great records and consistently put out wonderful concerts. Consistently performed in fantastic concerts that were crowd pleasers to this day. I saw them, I guess, at this point about 4 years ago as part of a multi-package tour with Greg Allman or somebody like that. Forgive me if I've got it wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right. Stole the show. Stole the whole doggone evening. They were far better than I thought they had any right to be. Because, they've still got Patrick Simmons. Michael McDonald is back with the band. They had to hire people, for people who have passed on or left the music business, of course. The Doobies still have John McPhee, too. I don't want to be remiss in saying that. He joined the band kind of later on. A multi-instrumentalist, a tremendous songwriter again. He kind of rounds out the entire Doobie Brothers sound for the last, 25 years, 30 years at this point? Crazy. Doobie Brothers are underrated. They weren't just pop. The Captain Me album. Think of a song like Dark-Eyed Cajun Woman. That's a blues right there, and a good one. Really tremendous. Great playing, just great arrangement. Terrific singing. I think it was Johnston singing that one. And awesome guitar playing. They just had it. They were, they had a pop edge, but I don't think they were really ever pop. They were rock and roll. They were just accessible. And they wrote about things that you could relate to, like a wacky town that they lived in, or hey, without love, where would you be now? Right? So let's hear it for the Doobie Brothers. And, I even like the McDonald era, too. What a singer he is. But let's give a big round of applause to Tom Johnston, one of the great rhythm players you will ever hear. His signature sound was the sound of a decade, the 1970s. All right, the last player on our list for this particular soiree, I bet you few of you who are listening have ever heard of him. When I was a young adult, I was not rich. All right, I can tell you about my meager upbringing a lot, and I was never a rich guy, and I'm in Albany, New York. I was in a record store called Just a Song. They had a couple of locations in the Albany area, I believe. And I'm browsing around the store, and they had a huge bin of cassettes. Well, I had a cassette player in my car. Yeah, you're old, man. You're really old. You shut up. So anyway, I'm fudging through this array of cassettes, and on a whim, because they were either 50 cents or $1 a piece, I bought a stack of them. Here's what I bought in that stack. My Labors with Nick Gravenitis, 50 cents. A band called Bonnaroo, which consists of some of the best session players in the Los Angeles area. And guess who I found out was playing a song of that album? Domenic Troiano, if you can believe it. He did sessions too. That's another fine record, the original Bonnaroo. Long before the concert series called Bonnaroo, I'll have you know. I found an Etta James cassette for 50 cents. And the fourth one, and there were more, but this is what I remember, was an album called Full Moon, featuring Buzz Feiten and Neil Larson. So this must have been, what, around 1982, I guess? Full Moon. The band was called Full Moon at that point. And what an absolutely killer record of great musicians doing what they do best, particularly Buzz Feiten. Now, he's had an amazing career that should list him amongst all of the greatest American guitar players of all time, and I can't find two people who know who he is. I'm here to put an end to that right now, folks. This guy's it. Now, these days, he's probably best known as somebody who manufactures and markets his own line of electric guitars. But during the 70s and 80s, he was recognized by a lot of people as one of the finest guitarists in America. No question about that either. He usually performed in progressive rock or prog rock projects on his own, such as the Larson Feiten Band or other groups. And he's also the maker of a very popular product, the Buzz Feiten tuning system for electric guitars. But his past is even more noted than that. Dig this. He replaced Elvin Bishop in the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. Legendary act, right? But that's just one thing he did. He was also the lead guitarist for the Rascals for two of their later albums, Peaceful World and Island of Rio. Then he worked with so many sessions, I can't name everybody he worked with. Some of the biggest names in music, all over the place. Pop, rock, jazz. He could play anything. But I want to talk about his individual playing, particularly in the album Full Moon. Absolutely fantastic. This is about 3 or 4 instrumentals on that album that'll just curl your toes. He is so good, so smooth. I don't know, I kind of would compare him to a Larry Carlton, maybe. that type of a sound. But again, each one of these guitarists that we talk about today have their own sounds. Like Bill Nelson, I can't compare to anybody else. Can't compare to Clapton. Clapton never was progressive. I can't really compare Buzz Feiten to, the other jazzy guys, because this guy could rock and roll too. He could play anything. He could play pop, anything at all. But he's worked with so many artists as a session musician, I can't even name them all. This might be one of the most influential and talented American guitarists of all time. And by the way, one of the finest musicians Long Island's ever produced. And I've never heard him mentioned in Long Island. I worked in Long Island for Long Island Entertainment paper all these years. I had no ideas from this area. I had no idea. But that changes here with me. I'll tell you right now. Seek out that underrated 1982 masterpiece, Full Moon band name, and it'll tell you everything you need to know. You can hear it on YouTube Music. There was another Full Moon album that came out, I believe, in 2002, like 20 years later. You might want to check that out as well. Again, it's progressive sounding rock, but it's accessible. It's not crazy. It's not crazy changes and too jazz like. It's just really, really deft musicianship. So I will say it one more time. Buzz Feiten is easily one of the most accomplished American guitar players. And like I say, I'd wager this is the first time a lot of you have ever heard his name. Just an amazing, amazing musician. I am looking into more and more of his music all the time. Here's the problem. With non-million selling artists, it is getting harder and harder to find their recorded works. To me, it's a labor of love, though. If I see a cassette somewhere, I'll grab it, or a CD in a used store, I will buy it. I think in my old age, I want to get back to picking up CDs again, because, there are some places to find them, and rekindle the memories. You know what? I will tell you one more story about Domenic Troiano. This has nothing to do with Domenic, but I swear this is true. I am in high school. I am in a small town in upstate New York, and the carnival came to town, right? The carnival's in town, and, they had all the rides, and they had all the games, like throw the softball at the milk bottles and the hoop shoot and all this other stuff. And they had this other game where you would take a water gun against other people, and it would be a horse race, and you would make the horse run by hitting the target better than everybody else, and you could win prizes doing that. So I played that at the carnival for a while, and then I walked down to another game, and it's the balloon pop. Right? If you pop the balloons, the rule, I don't know if you popped it twice, you got to pick out the prize that you wanted. And I'm looking up. This is before I even started to play the game. I'm looking up at the brave prizes. There's a fuzzy bear. There's a basketball. There's a kite. There's a line of record albums. One of them was Domenic Troiano's second solo album called Tricky. I am not kidding you. I'm at a carnival, and they had an array of cutout records there, and there's a Domenic Troiano album hanging there waiting for me to win it. Well, I don't know what I spent popping balloons. I think back then each try was 50 cents. Not only that, but I won an album by Jerry LaCroix too. Jerry, who used to play in the Edgar Winter Group, and whose Mean Old World song I covered on my album 3 Leg Dogs. So I'll tell you, you never know what you're going to find and where you're going to find it when you just browse around this place we call the United States of America. I tell you what, I think it'd be a great idea if we all start shopping for recorded music again. Everybody must have a player out there. If you're an older person like I am, who just happens to be hearing this podcast, you must have a CD player or a record player or whatever. But there's tons of used stuff out there. I haven't gone shopping for regular records. I used to do it all the time, weekly. I lived in the New York City area during the height of Tower Records, right? And I lived in upstate during the height of Corvettes, which was a great place to buy records. And now they're all gone. There are places to buy some new records, but new records are $45 a piece. I'm not interested in the new records or Morgan Wallen or whoever. I want to find some old stuff. So I say to you, and there's more to life than eBay. There are yard sales. There are thrift shops. You never know what you're going to find. I say let's get out there and find some treasures. And if you find some treasures of stuff that you missed or would always want to hear, let me know at outdatedent at gmail.com. We'll talk about it here on the air in the future. In the meantime, I want to give thanks to Buzz Feiten, Tom Johnston, Rusty Young and Paul Cotton of Poco, Domenic Troiano, and Bill Nelson. Great players all. And I hope you avail yourselves of hearing one or all of them very, very soon. I promise you'll thank me for it. I'm telling you, you'll thank me for it. I hope, anyway. Attention, Gen Xers. If you'd like to explore the era that appeals to you, look no further than GenerationXWire.com. The generation who grew up with elite in entertainment, music, movies, TV, books, pro wrestling, and more finally has a one-stop destination for all their Gen X needs. From Aerosmith to Batman to the Killer Bees to the Twilight Zone, there's something for everybody at GenerationXWire.com. You won't find a more eclectic mix of pop culture content than at the leading website that specializes in the greatest generation, GenerationXWire.com. Check it out today. We hope you enjoyed what we're brought to you in this edition of the Outdated Entertainment Hour. We are working right now on getting a very special guest onto this program, or I should say this podcast, a cast member from a film that's having an anniversary this year. One of the greatest films ever made in my estimation, and we are working feverishly to try to get him on this podcast. Whether it's going to happen or not, I can't say yes or no, but this is the type of thing we're going for here, something you won't hear anywhere else. So keep your eyes and ears peeled. Check us out on Facebook. We'll fill you in on all that. And we're hoping to get some of our popular special guests back on the show as soon as possible, too. Write to us, outdatedent, that's outdatedent at gmail.com. Both the Outdated Entertainment Hour and the Outdated Wrestling Hour are productions of Bob Smith podcasts. Find me on Facebook. I'm the only Bob Smith that sings with BB King. I almost said that backwards. You can also find outdated_Bob at Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads, and X, or whatever, however you want to pronounce that. In any event, that's it for now. My name is Bob Smith. We hope you enjoyed this look back at some very underrated guitar players. Maybe we'll do bass players or drummers or something like that next, or albums. There's been some great albums from decades gone by that have slipped under the cracks. We'll have some special guests on, hopefully, to go over all that. My name's Bob Smith. We'll see you next time in the Outdated Entertainment Hour. Until then, as the never outdated Ringo Starr always says, peace and love, brothers and sisters. Peace and love.